Hello, everyone. This is Corey Doggs of Action Coach Business Coaching, and I'm excited to have David Zey, founder and president of Zeytech out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, with us today. David is a seasoned technologist and digital strategist from the Midwest with 25 years of experience, and he excels in transforming technology into business growth. His expertise in e-commerce and digital strategy has significantly enhanced online marketplaces and SaaS solutions, focusing on user engagement and sales growth. Known for aligning technology with business objectives, David has a track record of driving operational efficiency and market competitiveness. His leadership extends beyond technical skills to fostering high-performing teams and streamlined IT operations. David's strategic problem-solving has consistently improved system reliability and business intelligence, aiding informed decision-making. While proficient in various technical domains, including cloud computing and AI DataOps, his greatest strength lies in translating these skills into tangible business outcomes. David's approach to technology is not just about implementation, but about creating strategies that propel business growth, innovation, and a competitive edge. Zeytech specializes in managed IT services, empowering businesses to manage their infrastructure, cloud services, and vendor relationships, while ensuring robust cybersecurity, really important nowadays, along with IT risk management and business continuity. They also excel in application development, creating tailored software solutions that drive innovation and streamline operations. And at Zeytech, they are your trusted partner, delivering technology solutions and value to support your growth and success. Something unique about David, I found this was really interesting, is that he has a minor in music and initially planned a double major in music performance on the saxophone, and physics. Yep. Music and physics, interesting combination. However, he discovered early that his talent for technology and building things was there, which led him down a different path to where he is today. His favorite downtime activity is just adventuring with his wife. She's an incredible explorer with a unique perspective that brings out the best in life and people, and she colors his world and makes every adventure more meaningful. Something David is most proud of, this is also interesting, he's most proud of his 7 children, each of whom is unique and conscientious in their own way, seeing their potential unfold and anticipating the paths they will choose in life brings him immense joy and pride. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome David to the show today. Hello, David.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on the show, Corey. Look forward to talking a little bit.
All right, cool. So first question for you. So personal story, kind of give us your background. We already talked a little about the saxophone and physics, but where did you grow up, and kind of talk us through where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm a Green Bay native. Aside from when I went off to college for music and physics, which was over at Lawrence University, I've always resided in Green Bay. That's where I hail from. And also my wife grew up in Green Bay as well, and so we married, and as you heard, family of 9. It's one of those things that I think neither myself or my wife ever do things easy. We always challenge ourselves, including being ambitious and raising a large family. But that's also been rewarding. I think also, as you had mentioned, technology really is my craft. I came into really unexpectedly in college, realizing, oh wow, like I really have an aptitude in technology and understanding and being able to translate technology into business. If I'm not doing technology, though, I do enjoy philosophy, and which is actually great because my oldest is a philosophy major, and so we have good discussions. But then also I enjoy getting outdoors, and I enjoy fishing, kayaking, running, those types of activities as well. Things that get me out of my head and back reconnected in nature.
All right. Next question. So how did you get to where you are now professionally? Obviously, you started out in college and found your aptitude was this, and then where did you start in the IT world, and what led you to today?
Yeah, so I've always been passionate about technology since high school. Even as I mentioned, I didn't discover it until later because I just assumed it was part of what I did and didn't think that I could make it a job. But then after high school and college, I spent the better part of my career as a technology consultant. Number of different industries, number of different businesses. But then in the last decade, my focus really turned to local businesses and startups, how to help them navigate growing their business, especially business in the last decade, technology, cloud computing, all these things have become important, and it just kind of has made the decision making even more full of things that have to be decided as a owner. So with that though, what kind of motivated me to start Zeytech was actually my own need for, as I worked with different businesses and companies, a quality service provider, one that I could rely on. So when I'm talking with a business leader and they're like, yeah, but how do we go do that? Being able to have an answer and say, well, I do know area companies in the area, but also in certain types of things, really hard technical things, that's where I was like, I need a team that can support that. So really, that was kind of the inception was, the people over the years that I built relationships, bringing them together as a team to be able to meet these needs. Um, and I think that in particular, where my interest lies now is, still in Wisconsin. When it comes to service delivery, it can be a mixed bag. There's a lot to navigate as an owner. A lot regionally, a lot of the best talent, especially in technology, does end up being absorbed into mid-level and enterprise business. And so for small business and mid-size, regionally, it can be hard to find the support that is available to the large organizations. And so, like I said, as a consultant, I worked in both enterprise and small business, but my passion really has settled in on being able to support regional local businesses, small and mid, and really helping them, one, smooth out operations so technology is not an emergency, but then also when they have needs like, hey, we're growing and we don't know how to approach this new topic or idea in the business that touches technology, being able to give them insights and answers.
All right, thanks for that. Next question, leadership. I'm not going to say it's a buzzword, but it's super important, and I think there's more lights shining on leadership now than ever before. And there's lots of different ways people lead. So would you maybe like to talk about your leadership style?
Yeah. I would say my style is empowerment of teams. I think, that a lot of it's kind of assumed within a lot of jobs and skills that you're an expert, you're capable, those types of things. But really, the ability to work with others and be relational is important, even more so than your craft. Almost like what you do is assumed that you need to be good at it, but how you relate to people really is where it shines. And so, for me as a leader, there's a part of me where I am providing vision and direction to teams, but really my primary role is support of the team, providing what they need so that they can lead in their jobs and work with one another. And that goes with, Zeytech and our team really have a strong culture, and the team, is, I'm usually very much supporting and finding out how I can support as the team is driving forward on different initiatives, client relationships. But I think in general, that is my style over the years, is just realizing that, especially in technology, you need so many people to be experts in so many different ways. It's just not something a single person can really own well.
And not to mention this how fast technology is evolving. How do you
It
stay
is.
on top of everything, right?
It is. And honestly, like that's been important for me because as my teams are able to execute, it has given me room to be able to make sure that I'm looking down the road and seeing what's coming. And, some of it is reinforcing what is currently valuable and to our clients and customers. But some of it is also like, hey, if we don't plan for, the turn off to get on ramp to AI or whatever that might be, we're going to miss some opportunities both for our clients and ourselves. And so that's afforded me the opportunity to be also looking ahead.
That's actually a good segue into the next question is tell us a little bit more about Zeytech. I know that we talked briefly before we got on the phone or the call today.
Yeah.
And you talked a lot of like being Wisconsin regional, like who's your ideal customer, what size company? Give us a little bit more about kind of Zeytech and who you like to work with.
Yep. And so I'll start out with what we do because there's kind of two main things we do, but that'll help kind of say what customer is ideal, how we can help them. So our main focus is managed IT and co-leading of IT within organizations. In a lot of cases, helping those organizations where they may be really from a startup with the entrepreneur and maybe another employee up to businesses that are maybe looking at 80 to 100 employees.
Okay.
But depending on the industry and depending on what they offer, from a business problem perspective as well as a managing of their employees, they may have very small IT shops, no IT at all. They may be managing a developer who kind of does everything. And there are just opportunities there where management may not feel equipped to fully keep everybody operating with their technology. Downtime is a problem, or it might be that just helping support their developer or their IT team to make them more effective. And sometimes even just in terms of managing an IT team, if that's not your background, you feel like you're not helping them as a team get everything they need from a career perspective.
Mm.
And so it's not that requires a lot, and a lot of it should be kind of self-driven anyhow within the team, but that encouragement is oftentimes which is what's needed, but also can be lacking. And so a lot of what we do is really just providing that co-led technology leadership as well as just keeping things smooth. And then as a kind of a secondary offering, what we do, there's a lot of depth in our team on technology innovation. And so as problems arise, that can be all the way down to like, plant machinery that needs to send data out for business intelligence, or it might be something completely new that's an offering out to the market for a startup that we can actually actively support and play in that space to build those solutions and really be able to answer any of those questions. Or, if there is a certain thing where we're not the expert on it, being able to know who in the area is still reputable and is an expert for it, and just knowing really regionally what is available to support business.
All right. Next question. When did you realize you had the confidence to do this and run your own business?
So that's a good question. Honestly, as I thought about it, I would say year 3
Oh, really?
of starting the business. There was a part, and I think the key is the word confidence, because like I think at the beginning I was courageous, like saying like,
Yeah.
hey, with a lot of hard work, which I know I can do, I should be able to figure it out. But what was the interesting measure is like starting the business. One of the things, like I'd started the business and jumped in fully myself,
Well,
which
how many years has Zeytech been around now?
so we're coming up on 6 years.
6. Okay. So you said
Yep.
year 3 is when it really like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. And
Okay.
part of
Sorry.
it is when you think about it, like as a new business, you're kind of like, well, where do I get my funding? What if I need to have like a line of credit, something like that? And one of the things I realized by starting a new business and jumping in right away, you kind of lose out. Like if you don't get your credit lined up at the beginning, you kind of lose out for the first 3 years. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing you really get to do. So like the first 3 years, as I learned lessons like what does it actually mean to have cash crunch, where on both sides, money in and money out, you're getting crunched. Like as we kept going every year, I was like, okay, well maybe I can convince the bank that maybe a little bit of credit, maybe I can convince. And what was really interesting is coming into year 3, which was the kind of like what it was always looking, year 3 will get, I came to realize, we don't necessarily need any line of credit right now. We're
Mhm.
doing okay. And so that was actually kind of the moment where I was like, it surprised me and didn't surprise me. Like it made sense, like why that was the prize for all that time. And when you finally got there, you're like, well, and it also made me wonder if that might actually, I think there are certain places where line of credit, debt financing is important in different industries. So it's not to say it isn't, but I think there's also knowledge behind that. The banks kind of know, like, well, you get to year 3, you've gone through enough knocks that you probably are in a better stable place.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, next question. What would you do differently if you can go back in time to the beginning of your career? Would you change anything? And if so, what?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a hard one, because when I look at all the things, and even like the bad decisions or the mistakes, like there's a part of it, right, that those ultimately contributed to who I am now. And
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
and so like there is that element, like, okay, well, what if I could take the knowledge I have now and go back? What would that be? And suspending the fact that end up a different person. Um, I think probably the biggest thing that I never realized as much until more recently, in the last decade or so, is that um, like all of business and all of life is actually about people and not the problems and the challenges themselves. And so like, it's important to be able to apply a craft and be an expert. It's important to be able to, but there's so many times where what really needs to be navigated is the relationships and how people are interacting with one another around value and need. And so really business and everything ends up being far more about relationship. And you can imagine, because even though I'd say I'm generally fairly well-rounded,
Mhm.
being focused on technology and being as passionate as I was, there was a period where, I definitely fell into that category of being a geek. And, I think as such, like, I would pick a technology problem over a people problem any day. And now just being more willing to realize, like, sometimes the technology problem or the business problem is an effect of something else. And sometimes it's getting to a common understanding with those who are involved that actually unlocks everything. And it's not actually just trying to fix the effect, the problem that's there.
Well, that kind of feeds into what you shared about your approach to leadership, Zeytech's approach to working with businesses. It's communication and people, right?
Yeah,
And
it really
there's a
is.
stereotype out there, IT. Well, it's people that sit on their computers all day. Well, that's part of it, right? But you
Right.
still have to communicate and have people skills in
Yeah.
any role, anywhere, in any business.
And I think honestly, like one of the things that um, we found is, you do need to be able to take care of, like, if you're supporting businesses as a service provider, you do need to take care of like the needs, the issues, the tickets that come up. But a lot of times it's easy to say, like, oh, the faster I get the problem resolved, that's value, that's quality. And what I found, and our team has found, is a lot of times it's more about, one, letting the whoever's in charge or responsible for what's going on, letting them know that, one, we have the issue, and
Mhm.
two, letting them know here's where we are and this is what it's going to look like. And that is almost more valuable than the resolution. The resolution needs to come, but sometimes also resolution may be realizing that the issues, the effort to resolve the issue isn't worth other business decisions. And sometimes, just trying to solve it isn't actually in the best interest of the business.
Yeah, so you have to get to the root of it and then dig deep, because
Yep.
sometimes what on the surface isn't the issue at all, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So speaking of stereotypes, a lot of people have stereotypes on business owners. Oh, he or she owns a business, and that comes with some judgment. Um, and we all know that, how this owning a business.
Yep.
uh, Any myths you want to dispel? Any insight you want to give to everyone out there about
Yeah.
that?
I think the two things, and I'll talk more just in related to like small and mid-sized business. There's a whole different conversation around the startup ecosystem. and the way in which business is portrayed, and founders in that ecosystem. I think it's true regardless, though, of what business you're looking at. The first thing, like I would say, is for founders and presidents, CEOs, whoever, it is not easy. They are not like coasting on their teams. They're, hopefully they're very appreciative and empathetic of their reliance on their team. But like there's this element that like there are just things that that founders have to own that like you don't even imagine. And like some days you wake up and you're like, that's a thing, isn't it? Or you're like, oh, that did just happen, and now we got to deal with it. I think the other piece to that is that I think we've heard, social media, otherwise this to be true, but I think it's really important to reemphasize courage does not mean you don't experience fear while you're doing something hard. And so, I think that goes part and parcel with being a founder or president. Like there are things where you don't know and you're stepping into the unknown, and that willingness to take a step forward, even though you don't know, comes with fear. But the fact that you're taking the step is what actually is courage. And that's a lot of what courage ends up being. If you come into the situation fearless, I would argue that's not as much about courage at that point, because there's other things at play. And I think a lot of times when we see people who do come into a situation fearless, that probably gets back to what we were talking about of they've been in this environment long enough that they've built up experience and skills where they're more confident. It's still hard for the rest of us, if we were in their shoes. But I think real courage is when you don't have it all figured out and you're still willing to take a step forward.
And you have the confidence that you will figure it out, whatever it is.
Yes. Yep. Your confidence is less about how will I solve today and more about as long as I keep applying myself, we'll get there.
Next one, what is one or a few of the most interesting insights you've learned or advice you've received recently that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think it's from the team dynamic, team perspective. One of the things that I do think that is also contributes to kind of some of the myths is that there's this odd tension with being part of a team and also being a leader, in the sense that you really are reliant on your team to be your team. And it really doesn't come through control. It really comes by letting go of that, but being very clear and a good communicator in terms of vision and expectations, setting a working environment where everybody knows where their role is, and also when things come and shake the boat, how everybody can quickly help each other get back in the boat and keep rowing. And when difficult times come, and especially when, like as the leader, as the owner, you still shoulder a lot of the responsibilities. And then when you are shouldering those, a lot of the work there is how do you create an environment, a space to let the team do what they need to do. And sometimes that means that you have to trust more in that giving them the space than in like, what are we going to do? Like this challenge is really scary, and I feel like, I want to start second guessing my team. And it's that kind of moment of fear where you have to decide, am I going to continue to lead the way I have been, that bad time me leads the same way good time me does, or am I going to let it all kind of unravel? Because if it unravels with me, it unravels with the team.
Right. Like even in sports, right? The teams and parents/spectators take on the personality of their coach.
Yep.
Right. So when you have someone as you see that, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Next one. What is something new you would like to learn outside of business?
So it's interesting because if I think about that, it kind of is business related, but not really. It gets this whole thing about understanding people.
Okay.
For me, learning the philosophy and art of negotiation is something that's been on my list for the better part of at least the last year. And part of that is one of the things I found, and it's really interesting, is a lot of ideally, I think relationally, if we can collaborate with people, that's great. But collaboration requires effort and time, and especially like in life, we're all strapped for time. And so a lot of times, what happens then is we do have to look to ways to compromise. The thing that I found really interesting is I don't like just generally, and I would even just say in our society, getting to a conversation of compromise, like what we think compromise is and what it actually looks like when we do it. We don't have a lot of experience with it. And I think that there are things we can do that are meant to be in the right direction of getting to compromise, but how it's received can all of a sudden, it can make the problem seem bigger, because it feels like we're being asked to give up and lose, when what we're really saying is like, here's a thought, and then, well, I don't like that thought, but that's okay, and here's what I would like to see. Like a lot of times it's we find ourselves emotionally caught in not really wanting to move to that next part of compromise. And so for me, just understanding, I think, our human condition, and also understanding, right now, even for us as a society where we are contextually, like, is helpful to, if nothing else, appreciate, the responses, and say like, all right, so I'm not going to react. I think I might understand what's going on here. Let me try a different way and try to keep moving the conversation, and recognize that, I can be a little bit more patient in that process, because we're all like, we don't get enough cycles to practice compromise with one
And so
another.
just being aware of it, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, let's be honest, is that we're all selling and or negotiating 24/7.
Yeah.
Just we are, right? Just
Yep.
you're talking to people, your partner, your kids, whatever, your
Right.
employees, your
Limited time,
clients.
limited resources. And then on top of that, like, our what we have to offer in the morning is not the same as what we have to offer in the
Right.
evening, and that's, sometimes that's a hard one to deal with as well, because you're like, 10 years ago, I could just keep going, and
That's right. We're getting older.
now there's so much more to be mindful of.
So like, where are you finding your resources and information on how to learn some of that?
Um, So part of it has been, well, part of it has helped with my oldest daughter being in philosophy. I'm getting, I know a number of the kind of traditional historic philosophers, but she's been introducing me to a number of contemporary ones, which has
Oh,
been
cool.
fascinating to go through and just see a different perspective. But typically, I will also just look through, like, from leadership coaching or other like blogs or materials that will point to kind of what are some of the highly recommended de facto things that just help you, figure out what has been said in the last 50 years
Okay.
that's been really useful for others.
All right. Next question. Thinking about Zeytech. What's the next big thing? What's the number one area of growth and development you see happening at Zeytech?
Yeah, I mentioned, a little bit before that, the managed IT, the technology leading, is our primary offering. One of the things we're actually trying to do is grow that to be that primary position within the business. Right now, we do a lot more that is on that application development side, and while it is really great to be able to engage in that way, coming in and understanding the business at the ground level, and understanding kind of, what are the goals, supports that type of work much better than simply coming in at a project and doing the project, but really not kind of missing the opportunity to have some of those conversations beforehand. And also, when you get to the end, then kind of saying, okay, what's our relationship look like, and how can we support? So that's one of the things that we are actively, it's really our goal over the next 18 months
Okay.
to keep really pushing towards building those types of managed IT co-led relationships. and letting that be the basis then for seeing where opportunities are that we can support beyond that when there are needs that come up.
And on the flip side, what do you see as being your number one challenge, or what might get in the way of that happening?
Yeah, um, I'll just say it because it seems like it's always a challenge for every business, sales. But in particular, for me, what it's been is like learning how to do sales in an authentic way. There's this interesting dynamic in sales of like sales is like in some ways I feel like sales represents the human condition the best in the sense that it's important to our survival and yet we have no real control over it. We have things we can do, just like, use the hunter-gatherer analogy. You can go out in the field and you can go look for, what's going to be dinner, but you might come back empty-handed. And you have, if you don't go into the field, you're guaranteed, you're going to be empty-handed. And so, sales really ends up being interesting because you want to be able to control the process. But when you really think about that, what that's really saying is you want to be able to control people to make decisions to buy your product. And you do indirectly have that ability by the quality of service you have, what you provide, but there's still a lot more that goes into that. And so I think the challenge is how to do that in a way that is authentic. And I know that's kind of a little bit of a buzzword, but in a way that it is, it's relatable, it's understanding. Everybody knows when you're being sold to, like, when it's a hard sell, when it's like, well, I mean, it doesn't totally put me off. And then there's also ones like, hey, I appreciate the way you shared what you had, and that was a soft sell, and like, thank you, because there's a lot of people vying for my attention. So that's been the challenge, I think, is finding that right voice and being willing to not make it about control, but actually being authentic and recognizing we're all people and we actually all feel very similar around when people want our attention. And also what we all value is when we see something that is really valuable, interesting, like, that resonates with us. But there's also a lot of things where we might not know, or the time might not be okay, might not be right, and that's all okay.
And it's also having those people skills and listening skills. And we like to call sales as professionally helping someone to buy when there's a need that you can help them fill.
Yep.
Right. Just kind of, yeah. Last question before we start wrapping up is, what advice do you have for business owners out there who are trying to do it all by themselves?
Don't find people that'll support you. But there's too many things that you have decisions to make on, and the reality is that it's not realistic for us to be competent in every skill of a business. It just doesn't. It's not worth the time. It's really, if we try to, I would say, and now this is me being really opinionated, but if we're trying to do it all, then we're not actually valuing our own time. We're not putting the appropriate value on what we can do. And I also think it's important as a business owner to think about what your role is and what it isn't. Because one of the things that I think often happens is, even like for me, like, passionate about technology, can do projects, all these other things. That's good as the technician. But in a business, while the technician is needed, you also need an entrepreneur, someone who is business looking out. But then on top of that, you also need somebody in the middle, like a project manager, or somebody who is keeping the technician sane while the entrepreneur is out doing all the things, and like, so then there really are like multiple roles that to wear them all at the same time becomes a real hard mental burden, I think, for founders, because you have to then negotiate those conflicts of interest in your own brain, which is tough. And like, I do say, like, I have found I can compartmentalize myself a little bit more and do that. Like, I actually, like, it sounds weird, but I actually do have negotiations with myself on certain things, because if I don't, it leaves these contradictions within me that like affect my ability to talk about something in a convincing way. because there's a part of me that still is like in the back saying, I disagree. So, so that would be my encouragement is find, there are resources, there are other business owners that have gone before us, thankfully.
Yes.
Find a mentor, find somebody that can help. Also, when it comes to doing things like finances and the other things, you do need to be aware of it, but there are a lot of people who will be more aware of all the things that actually really, really matter that you don't want to have to pay attention to. So,
Yeah. All right, well said. All right, now it's shout out time. Chance for you to give some shout outs to people who have impacted you and have helped you along your journey.
yeah. Um, Actually, where I would start is there are up in Green Bay two similar organizations to Zeytech that technically would be competitors, but we've had really good relationships and have had similar journeys. I'd give shout outs to would be Headway and also Tandua Partners. Those are two up here that do a lot of similar but different things. And it's just good to see the ecosystem and the younger service providers that are have been working hard to help our ecosystem. Also, that in the startup space, they're actively involved in helping promote the startup ecosystem as well, which is continuing to grow across Wisconsin, which is really great to see with like Startup Wisconsin and Startup Week events and that type of thing.
Right. Just to wrap up, how can someone learn more about Zeytech and the services you provide and get in touch with y'all?
Yeah, two options. One, our website, zaytech.com, has a lot of interesting use cases, things of what we've done. With there also, though, like our team members are there, they're available to be reached out to, and over LinkedIn as well. We're very active out on LinkedIn. So honestly, if you want to connect at a personal level, that's probably the easiest way is just to, over LinkedIn, reach out to team members at Zeytech, and we're happy to have a conversation. Hopefully even just talking here, like our first intention is not sales. It's just to have a conversation and to be helpful.
Okay. And Zeytech is Zeytech, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right. All right. Well, David, that's all the time we have for today. It was a pleasure having you on. And
Yeah, thanks for having me.
okay, thanks.